today I learned much more than I ever read about embodied cognition and inaction in that single session. And then I listened to your story yesterday and I learned much more about what I experienced closely, because I was not participating, but I was experiencing. From your point of view, I learned different dimensions of the story. So now this is my story. This is my sketch to understand this field, this population. And I'm going to tell my story, I'm not going to read anything. And since I need to catch my train, I took the take-home lessons early on. Oh, that's here, sorry. So, take-home message. If you're going to fall asleep, this is what I'm going to talk about. And, the first thing, human-computer interaction is not a stream of science, and it makes everything in a similar way. There are several streams going on. We think it's yoga that has several streams. We think it's history or something. Why not science and technology? We also are operating in different streams, and some of them are looking at information processing and different way of understanding the technology. Some of us looking at very closely about what is the human condition and what can we do about that. Yes, technologies, big companies are making things and they are putting efforts on that. But because of that, we also can buy a Kinect for 100 euros instead of buying 16,000 off the truck recording. So there are always advantages or disadvantages in that. Here's an attempt to tell you from the human-computer interaction part of view, like why we need that, why are we coming closer to your field of operation and these kind of things. And I'm going to show a term. I think you looked at remote operations, and there is a fascinating study which gives the term to us to technomorphism, which is anthropomorphism's reverse, and also mechanomorphism, which has the different things. Technomorphism is to think about technology from the technology point of view. So we accuse the technologies of doing that, but it's actually a threat for everybody. So let's avoid that altogether. And then there's a practice about to tell what we're doing and how we're doing. I'm going to pull up some kind of exercises that we're going to share together. And currently I'm looking at multimodal listening. And it has an interesting correspondence to what we talked yesterday. How many of us knows Evelyn Glennie? One person, two. Great. Evelyn Glennie, she's a percussion player. She's deaf. And because of her, in the conservatory in England, they needed to change the admission rules. Because they didn't want to examine her, because she's deaf. How can a deaf person play with an orchestra? She insisted that they took her to the college, and she's one of the most important percussion players. And she developed a procedure to listening. It's called multimodal listening now. And this process is something like we can't do. I mean, she can only do that because she's deaf. What she does is she touches the instrument, uses subtip channels, she uses her body to listen. Well, we have body and we have touch too, so why don't we do that? So this is the practices that I'm trying to build now. But this is the lesson part, then let's go to the story. No, let's not go to the story. I'm just standing here. I'm going to stand here that I want. So we talk about embodiment, like it's a single term. Here's a social science paper, Tim Roder, Body in Space. He gives us 11 different definitions of embodiment in different fields. So now we're seeing each other and saying like, do you do embodied interaction? Yeah, I do embodied interaction. Which one? So how do we avoid that? This sketch. We talked, not in the sketch. We talked a lot of this yesterday, that we're considering human beings as with single eye, 2 ears, and a big finger. That's the mouse presentation. But we never sketched that. So this is how it should look like a bit. A sketch gives an idea about what the whole thing is about, right? So that part was the lesson, not my story. Motivation. You may ask, what kind of motivation is that? At Aalborg University, we make problem-based learning, and we have several students, shameless promotion. Something here, please. If you know people like this, enjoying this, please stop. We have projects, and we matchmake the student groups with the projects. We had a call from the Museum of Instruments. Do I have the time somewhere? No. But could you tell me 5 minutes? Okay, okay, wow, lot of time. So, Museum of Musical Instruments told us that they are going to a new place and they want to do something with technology and musical instrument. And we said, okay, we're the music technology, why not? We can help you. We found some students and told them, like, we want to make this new musical instrument. How can you extend that? How can you make something completely different? Okay? And by completely different, we definitely didn't mean that. So they thought, well, there's a big community of process coming together and making fruits, so why don't we make a whole installation about these musical fruits? We put IMUs, inertial measurement units, inside, so you would move, and you would make music, and it would be collected. And we go like, wow, this is strange, but let's pitch that to the museum. They developed the concept, so that it should have lights, and that it should, the whole tree should be organically good, and individual fruits are the instruments that they listen to each other, networked, and you can make, oh, we go like, wow, let's do it. So they started doing it. We have an electronic laboratory, they laser cut the individual fruits, they put the things, and they started doing it, okay? And we are giving them some kind of interaction design background and all of this. So they agree with the idea of early testing. So they make something and immediately ask the people what do they think about that. And here's our students, other technology students, who are testing the device. Now check. Okay, so you get the point. He's thinking like the accelerometer in that machine. He's not a typical user. Okay? His perception is, how does that work? He's not giving user feedback. There is a fake user evaluation. So we told our students, like, don't believe in that. This is not real. You have to go to your real context. They didn't listen. There are several times they won't listen and they're going to get into trouble in that story. So what I said, that people are thinking like sensors, is developed a wonderful PhD about the same remote operation. There was a Cornell scientist who looked at how Robert, this Mars robot, is operating in Mars, and how the researchers are becoming little replicas of that robot. They're thinking like with robot cameras. And if they want to see something, they put the robot configuration. There are cases like this. So they actually are the robots, and it's an interesting affordance as well, like reverse. It's not we're humans, we're becoming that. Every time I hear about mapping, getting input, putting outside, I'm thinking about that. Are we thinking in what is possible with this thing? Or are we thinking about, okay, here's an accelerometer, how do I use it? And the second thing, my point is, becoming much more restrictive. And there's always a danger in all community to go into that level thing. So now we have this technology, what can we do with that? It should be our area. It is like, what do I want to do? And for that, which technology should I use? We told that to students, they didn't believe. But they went to the schools and started to work with the real children. They explained the concepts, same photograph that I told them. They invited them groups, coordinated actions. Then they let it loose, taught the children to freely play with it. And in that play, they started to nice and stuff, testing was done. But they started to get wild. It's a laser cut device. When you hit somebody, it has sharp edges. And then it is a very kind of like a rigid structure too, it can break. So all these things unfortunately happen. When you go to the real context, you have to understand you don't have too much control on that, so you have to a little bit like be prepared for everything. So they get another lessons from that. With that lesson, they say the third step, saying that, okay, we're going to a little bit round the edges, we're going to ask the people, and then we're going to find a theory which explains lots of different things, how we can approach the problem, how do you design for something that would make the people move collectively and still make sense with the designer that thinks. So see, I'm not coming from the dance thing at all, I'm coming from a requirement and going closer and closer to that. So they took another theory, action sound, which we use a lot. In design, we're not thinking about the sounds coming per se. We're thinking about the actions which are producing that. This is reversing the French, the acousmatic listening tradition, to make it more concrete, more with muscles. And they started with that, and they put some kind of a pre-analysis thing, and they asked lots of people to experiment with that. What happened is, very nice instances of dance professionals who immediately understand, hey, this is going more and more to choreography, in some cases social choreography direction, through an artifact. So if it's like that, why don't we take this theory into account as well? They had a controversy like that. On the right side, which was happening. This is too small, so you're not going to see it, but there will be bigger ones. So, the first one, when you have a distributed thing like that, when you touch, of course there's a movement and sound, you affect immediately the proximity of the person. You're kind of guiding the person towards somewhere else, okay? This is one of the first steps of the choreography. Second one, when you have a device like this, she starts to make an interaction. My students interpret that as turning. They completely ignore the fact that she's using her whole body to do that. It is not a turning thing that we're making like this. It is the whole body is preparing for this. And the third part, we talked about the dictatorial thing. It's a social choreography dictated by this guy. So he's entirely telling the people what to do, what to connect, but at the end it becomes a social choreography as well. You're not hearing that, but with these things that they do is making lights, sounds, and it is aware of the other sensors, so they're making collective music. So, by this ambiguous thing, we came into the realm of like a choreography and moving and making. So then we said, why don't we give then what we have in the field as an experiment, as a course? And this is what when we are started to sketch an interaction. I'm not going to say too much, but I'm just going to say that human-computer interaction has lots of background actually to look at that kind of things. It's not coming from the theoretical side, but from the practical side. There is some kind of distributed things around us that we need to address, the interactive technologies. Whenever we could do that, we come into the realm of embodiment and interaction. So it's a requirement rather than kind of a theoretical stance for us. I'm going to switch that, and I'm going to show some of the things we did, and hopefully I'm learning more to do more. So we started in 2009 with my wife, who is a contemporary dance choreographer, to make little experiments. But these experiments should only use very local sensors, affordable. So we take a mobile phone, tape, literally, in her leg. And here's our daughter, sleeping. And then, when she moves, I mean, these devices that it is, we sometimes don't like, that it is like touch screen and does nothing, but they have sensors too. We can just record the sound, we can record the accelerometer, and based on that, we can understand the sound and action relationships in action. So that is very evident. We started to do experiments like that. Based on that, I invited her to the class. And we made slow movement exercises. We started with that. Walking exercises, oiling exercises, image focus, and everything. She builds a choreography with this. We also look at the code. We are not processing. Yesterday we talked about processing among us dinner table, that it's a very simple thing. But actually, you can start to look at the primitives of embodied interaction with it. Just look at the camera. There are so many examples in the processing that it gives you an idea about like moving objects and your movement related to that. Here are some ideas. Now be aware, I'm going to put them into the relation to lava. So not only robotics, but human-computer interaction also learns lava a bit late. And still, it's a useful tool. So it is a tool that I can address a practical problem. So why shouldn't I use it? It teaches the students more and more towards understanding what these things are that they're doing. There's a whole social dimension, there's a whole interaction dimension behind it. So we make these kind of experiments too. This is what I call sketches. Through this, I am able to teach the importance of these kind of things. They're simple. If you don't like them, you can throw it away. They're suggestive. They're not finished technologies. But I can make a point with that. So for example, I say a picture is 1,000 words. Right? Everybody agrees with that? Does anybody question why don't we draw this? If it's 1,000 words, we should be able to draw this and it should make its point very clear, but we see. So everything has its own meaning through our use. And this is the techniques we're going to use. Of course we go to virtual reality, multisensory interaction lab and everything, and we make that haptic experiments too. But this tells us different things. And these kind of sketches tell us different things. And by combining them, we can make meaningful things. I'm going to complete the story with a very unhappy end. It starts good. So, after the embodied interaction, our students made yet another iteration and finalized that thing. They put all these movement technologies, camera-based tracking, and cameras here, and they made this kind of thing. There are videos too. But they put them into YouTube. How many of you know Roskilde Festival, biggest festival, rock festival in Scandinavia? Yeah. Roskilde Festival called them and said like, wow, this is a cool thing. We pay you to install this. So what's bad about that? That the students still didn't listen one more advice. And then was around the time, so this low battery, I have 241, that's gonna finish it. Around that time, they were finishing embodied interaction. There was Ken Feingold from the United States talking about uncanny valley. That if you make too much organic things for popular consumption, there's a turning point that it becomes scary. That comes usually from robotics. And I invited them to Ken's talk, nobody came. So they put it to Roskilde. The first night, this thing was totally destroyed. Audience didn't like it at all. It was too strange for them to make collective music and this kind of drone-like aesthetic lights. They didn't leave any chip onto the device. I mean, they destroyed it like barbarically. And so, again, it was let's go. We don't have anything from this, but we start from scratch. We make a miniature form. It's like a flower vase that you can interact with it. It plays different kind of sounds, it plays different kind of movements. Your movements that you need to do is completely different on this. And also, we made another version of that for special education, severely cognitive people. It is like a baseball that you can throw. Now this wireless interface is inside. It gives the thing and you can map it to music. So it's making a music-making device which is collective and playful. And this is based on all these layers that we learn from it. Coming back to the take-home message. We're here to share stories. I learned a lot and I hope you remember my story too. But there's not a single thread in human-computer interaction. There's multiple threads. The only thing we can do is share the stories and understand each other, what we mean by that. So that was my story. Please, no technomorphism. It's an easy trap to go. we should be able to switch mind back and forth. It's good to look from each perspective, but knowing every other possible perspective. And multimodal listening. Now I'm elaborating that, making study exercises how to do that. There is 4 steps. You can read that. I wrote, I think I'm writing, actually, 13 seconds. So there are 4 steps involved in that. But here's our chance to promote this, a shameless promotion. There was a Nordic section about choreographies of technologies in 2014 in Helsinki. Now we are making a special issue on the technological magazine. So I invite all of you, this is the first version of Cumhur Bakers, but I ask your permission to distribute everybody around that. I want to hear your stories too, that we can build this thing up together. This is a cross-disciplinary, transdisciplinary approach. We are collaborating with choreographers, but also technologies. It is the human technology choreographies, body movement in space, pretty much aligned with the things. So let's send us paper, I'm going to send you the information and we keep on sharing all these stories. So, that's it, thank you.
The story about the destruction of the machine you were talking about. Because I mean, you said that after a certain point.
Yeah, that's not pretty well. So if you look at robot arms,
okay.
If you look at robot arms, if they're completely mechanical, you say, okay, it's robot arms. There's no harm. Okay, it belongs to a probably stupid robot who makes this. But if things are getting like similar and similar to human beings' actual thing, then comes a problem. Where do we know this problem? For example, from Oscar Pistorius. Okay, the guy couldn't walk, and then he put the prosthesis, but he wanted to achieve more. He wanted to change the prosthesis to a performance-making thing. What is wrong with that? Every athlete does that in different ways. You change the technology, by use of technologies you want to achieve better. When he wanted to run for the Olympics, everybody said, no, you can't do that. You're not human anymore, you're a transhuman, you're better than humans. This is the point that this technology starts to go backwards. It's becoming too scary, too unfamiliar, too threatening.
But what I mean is that on the practical act, I mean, you had this Babylon, this dream there.
Yeah.
People just say, let's destroy it, or it was more like, and yet, I mean, it was
I wasn't there, I don't know what happened. We just wanted the remakers of this.
I mean, it was looking like less fragile than what it is.
This is my theory, it might be not true. But there is a collective thing that people were expecting to have beer conversations and stuff like that. We're going to give a coffee break now. Let's assume there's a huge robot in our coffee break.
Okay.
We are there to make interactions, but there's a different assumption which doesn't match with this. And you're probably intoxicated and alcohol and stuff. I understand there could be a relation towards this thing.
Not because at time where I work, a lot of instruments that are like organic plugin,
Yeah, organic provision.
Yeah, you don't organize a lot of concerts.
I don't know, but I mean, often like tour with, there is like an exhibition. A lot of time they break our instruments because, for example, there is a web I fixed recently. And the reason because it broke is because people were not really perceiving that this is a fragile technology thing. So they were just saying, well, that's somewhere.
Actually, with the reference question, because it looks so fragile, people are very careful with it. That's why it only broke after 20 years.
Yeah, but there is a difference to find some arm in the ground and the whole thing to the latest chip destroyed. So it was the second thing we experienced. I mean, the students experience.
And what about your warning of the technocentrism, which I find it really interesting? Could you tell me a bit more?
Yeah, so it is about, if I could go a little bit deeper to the multimodalist thing, the first thing was, think that you're designing these technologies for nerve people, nerve-filled people. It is to be used, to be dropped, to be harassed at some point, but do understand how it should work in that context, and not only limit yourself to what actually can do. ask for what is meaningful to you. So that was, I would build on this. But make the starting point clear.
Yeah.
Well, if I may, actually I had a question for David just before. It's about your presentation was a lot about virtual reality, and I noticed the two experiments you show, the two illusions. The big question is about the timing of this illusion, because I don't know if in the article the illusions are explained, but they can be explained pretty easily. In the book, The Sense of Movement, of Anna and a lot of other phenomenologists and cognitive scientists or use the same example. You got this experiment where someone would try to touch the cheek of another one, and you realize that the guy who is touching has his brain to receive the sensation of, hey, I'm going to be touched much before it's being touched. Why? Because maybe, like I explained yesterday, the human brain is not just something that receives the sensory information. It's a simulator, and every sensor we got can anticipate. We are kind of we are inventing what's coming next. So somehow it's explaining the whole illusion, the one with the end, with the rubber hand. We teach the human brain that because of on the first time you're really touching the real end, you teach this visual phenomenon goes with this kinesthetic phenomenon. Then, okay, it's gonna work. It's the same with the body switching. But how long does it work? This is my question. How long this illusion keeps working on the subject? Is it really a tiny moment? You teach the subject the illusion, then it works, or does it keep quite a long time?
I completely agree with you. I think that's the problem of the people who make these experiments. For me, this is my material where I ask myself what are the constituents of production of knowledge about the body. And of course, you're completely right. I mean, this the problem of being touched and anticipating. I mean, the point of anticipation or something that we have already as the what he calls the peripersonal space. Something I do not see my back, but I can anticipate it. This I think one of the oldest problems in psychological problems. How can I trick the test person that the test person is not expecting what will come anyway? But maybe what could be an answer is that, and what I did not explain because of time, maybe that was also a kind of shortcut, is that behind these experiments, of course, like in any natural science, there's a whole apparatus, you could say, how to evaluate these experiments by questionnaires, for example. So they get this question: have you felt in this body? Have you felt the touch, etc., etc.? And then they make like statistics. And this is the first one. The second thing is what taking is kind of measuring the sweat of the person, the skin conductance. And then this is really something I mean, you are completely right, I have this problem, but nevertheless, this is kind of the state of the art where people ask, okay, this is how we can, for example, treat fentanyl pain. If we create this virtual environment where we can treat this pain, where we can create this body ownership illusion. If it works, I don't know. But the fact, what interests me is this whole constellation of digital technology to create this ownership illusion. And there are terms, for example, in this like proprioceptal drift, which is really kind of phenomenon of statistics. They measure the skin conductance during these experiments, and at the end they look how it relates at the beginning, at the end, and at the end, during the experiment, and they say, well, that's the point, somewhere in the middle, this is the point where the body ownership illusion was conducted.
I think another important fact about body swapping experiments is how they are part, I think, of an economy of increasing digitalization of life, and you know how Facebook and many companies are buying virtual reality glasses companies and things like that. So there's a tendency to immerse us more and more in a continuous virtual reality or mixed reality environment. So I guess that many of the experiments that Boris swapping could be explicitly or implicitly part of that increasing tendency of digitalization of life. Now, what I find problematic there is the tendency to reproduce reductionistic representations of the human body. So you reproduce that Cartesian kind of perception. You know, you see yourselves from your head, from your abstract vision position, and then you reproduce a kind of recognizable human body anatomy, and you swap one for the other. But it's in a way within the logic of representation. I was thinking when you were presenting this that my microsexes project, where I use these micro cameras on the skin, which I was briefly showing them when I did an experiment, is a kind of distorted body swapping, in which I'm not kind of placing another simulated digital body instead of mine, but through a shift in vision and how the eyes are disseminated on the body, the whole body proprioception transforms. It becomes another body. It's an otherception, it's not a proprioception, so the intention is radically different. It's not aiming at a control of a subject changing its body from another within a control economy. But so what I mean is one could creatively play with body swapping in a completely different direction than the one that's, I think, normally explored in economies of control.
But just one question is, it makes complete sense to me, but my question would be if these people do really see that as something, that could be a possibility for something like control media, control environment, but I don't know if these researchers are really interested in kind of control media. I mean,
I'm trying to look at the logic that is encompassing, you know, the tendencies of research. Maybe it's not even a question of some researchers maybe trying to consciously work towards something, but it seems to me that there's a certain logic underlying, you know, why they represent another human body, which is like, you know, looking at itself from the same position. I do the opposite. I use the same skin, my own skin, but it's being looked at from here. It's losing totally the head perception, the head orientation. So, you know, one could play with that in endless other ways, but there's a mainstream tendency to reproduce this kind of vision and kind of representation. That has a whole logic of representation behind it. You know, even if it's not, the problem is precisely that it's implicit. It's not even awareness.
But for me that's a fun effect. I mean, they start on there as philosophy has finished. With the same point of view, and start to create this huge digital environment to answer philosophically the question what is the and I think that's remarkable for me too.
Yeah, I think that it's also problematic to limit the notion of this affordance, that it may be an affordance of body swapping. You know, it may be that humans have evolved to have the possibility of having this virtuality of the body. So it's a question, you know, it's like we can see it now because we have created simulated environments, but perhaps that's the same phenomenon that has been going on from many, many rituals and existing in other cultures, you know, when we put certain kind of, you know, I always use you know, the image of the church. You know, you have a church, it's a very experiential design environment in which, you know, you evoke, you know, certain kind of experiences and emotion and affect, and people touch statues and someone else feels stuff. And I'm not saying that that's the truth, I'm just saying that it's a potential of the human cognitive endowment to actually have shared distributed experiences that are highly designed. And then that virtuality.
Let's say I can just put it right in the center of this, let's say a village. And there is no specific user that I'm sort of binding it to, but it is a universal place where everybody can actually interact. So in such a context, what do you think is this idea of understanding the universe?
I'm thinking this. Nobody's going to give you a huge list of which part people will come there. The only chance you can know is do something there, observe. If it's not working, do it again until it works.
Yeah, but with, let's say, like this concept of yours, which was playing around with these, and suddenly, let's say you place it in a scientific, let's say, context within which these rover guys are the ones who are now going to interact with it.
Yeah.
Do you think you would change the manner in which it actually behaves. Or in other terms also, I sometimes wonder why we consider the destruction of that object as something which is bad actually. I would term it as extreme engagement because of something. Why not? Why not? I mean, because otherwise, if I have let's say if I have a huge music speaker kept there, which is literally an object in the eyes of everybody, and therefore it is almost nobody cares.
Well,
at least somebody cares.
Yeah.
In what way? I'm not debating that.
Yeah.
I'm just asking you this.
So we're agreeing that we should look at the context of the things, right? There will be two implications. One of them is assume that you're a technology student coming to the examination and saying like, I made my work, I evaluated, but I can't show you it's disturbed, like it's broken now. I can't show you a demo, it's gone. So what would the teachers do? I mean, you need to evaluate something and you need to give grades on that, but there's no objective anymore. So then is the practical difficulty. So we're thinking in practical terms about what is this. Of course, I like the idea that it is engagement.
No, but I'm talking something else. I'm saying, let's say, right now when you analyze, okay, tapping, bouncing, moving,
Yeah.
and now it is not for them, but it is for everybody. A kid, an old man, a youngster, a punk, whatever, everybody is there. How would you then define what should be this user engagement? How do I understand this user engagement?
I would start with the idea that I won't be able to understand everybody. That's a messy business. There won't be a single thing for everybody that works.
Okay.
So when Harold Moscovich in the catch-up testing understood that, he provided kind of a big thing in sensory evaluation. His answer is similar. There's not a single catch-up that everybody likes. Period.
Yes.
So I understand the condition that there won't be a single interactive technology that will work for everybody in every context.
But in that context, and also what you actually said then was, in some ways you started talking about software as an ends to a means, saying that I code this in order to get this. But what I'm saying is, why can't you think of software as something which evolves in time based upon how it understands you as a user? So then there's a bigger difference, no? In trying to, let's say, even the interaction of something which is in front of you actually evolves in time, rather than staying the way it is. Because that reaction to rockstar is something completely different because it learns the attitudes of this rockstar. So somehow I still wonder whether how much are we still objectifying this idea of interaction, though we of course we term it as, okay, this is embodied, this is embedded, but in order for it to really work, I think, I wouldn't even term it as artificial intelligence or anything of that sort, but I don't know, something which actually triggers this other to also behave in a way which is, in a way, me. So that's another person in itself. I don't know, I somehow feel this.
Somehow, I think in this discussion, we're forgetting the body technique. It's just like, since the beginning, it's what I'm thinking about this project. It's somehow, because of you want to democratize music and music making, you forget that when you learn an instrument, you learn a body technique. Even though the instrument has a certain affordance, you don't do everything that the instrument affords, because there is a body technique that is agreed by everybody to use it. A violin, for instance. If I take your example, with anybody, any kind of people using a violin, even some people who never saw a violin and how to use it, it's much more than probable. For sure, it's going to be destroyed because of they don't know how to use it. It doesn't mean that the violin is not a right tool. It doesn't mean that you can't do anything with the violin. Just that means that you need to. As soon as you build an instrument, what you have to build with it is the causality of the instrument. What Robert was talking about yesterday as his main points. It's really important to have a causality between a body action, a body technique, and its answer by the tool. So this is
what I'm saying. The embodied system of the object only is the whole embodied knowledge. It's the whole movement. It's never possible to just put an object there and hope it to work on its own if there's no embodied knowledge being developed. You have to see it.
Because actually you're opening with the user. Because actually now we are working at the TU Delft with the robotics people who actually designed the rover for the European Space Agency. Yeah, but the idea is what we interpret from their understanding of distributed computing and how, in their case, it is about propulsion with motor control. But in our case, how we want to interpret it for a proactive kind of material space is something which is it then develops into an actual collaboration, in which you make them understand some things, they make you understand some things. So I would never categorize that, okay, you're an engineering background, okay, I don't really know. But I think there is something which really comes out because of this kind of a mixture. Because I mean, what you say about the hack actually developing to an extent, I mean, maybe it is being developed that way because it is helpful for certain people who have certain disabilities. So why not?
I need to pass it.
Yes,
yes. Yeah, so I think the technical way of thinking is first making an inquiry, then reflect on it. Okay, and do that in sequence. So I think in an ongoing project, the reflection is not done yet. So it's an open-ended project, we don't know. But in that project, like any other project, nobody's going to give us a list like this happened, and therefore like this. We go to the wild and try to understand as much as we can, or do as much as we can. Different contexts require different methodologies. So it's good to like evaluate everything in its own context, not make cross-things. I perfectly agree with that. But it's also important to understand how people are thinking in their own terms and how they're doing their things.
Yeah, but I find sometimes it's like, okay.